Parks and Cons, the companion podcast, the parksandcons.com website and YouTube channel, where we discuss cons, theme parks, collecting, and other fun stuff. It's May 20th, 2019. I'm your host, Sean. Parks and Cons, your on-the-spot podcast. We take the heart of the action, best convention and themed entertainment events around. Today, we are recording at the Disneyland Resort, and it's just going to be me this time, and I am about to go in, and as long as there's no complications, I'm going to visit the Galaxy's Edge over at Star Wars Land, as it was called before. Very excited for this. Going to basically do a quick little intro here, talk a little bit about just kind of leading up to this and kind of my thoughts going into it. Then we'll come back after I've experienced the land. They're not allowing any photo or videos today. This is the first day of any kind of real previews of the land, so I am ecstatic to be in there for it. But won't be able to share photos or video, but we'll be able to share thoughts on the land. We'll not get heavy into spoilers by any means on this podcast. We'll have a one maybe a little bit later on that, but we'll offer some strategies, some thoughts on it. And for my own selfish purposes, I'm just really curious to kind of use this as an archive for myself of what are my, feelings, thoughts, emotions, whatever it might be on entering this land. I have a very long history with Star Wars. I mean, I was born in 1976, so Star Wars has basically been a part of my life. Literally for as long as I can remember. I remember getting my first Star Wars Kenner action figure at Darth Vader back in, 1982, something like that. So long ago. It was for Easter. It was sitting there in an Easter basket. You know, I followed along and collected all of the Kenner Star Wars toys and followed the movie so closely through my childhood. I remember going through, literally my parents going to Toys R Us and getting them to bring cases out from the back and finding a Prune Face for the Return of the Jedi wave and the Gamorrean Guard, and not having any clue what those would be because the movie had not come out, hadn't seen the movie as of yet, but seeing Prune Face, like, wow, he must have a huge role. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And then he wasn't really in the movie pretty much at all. I remember prior to Return of the Jedi coming out, reading an article in the newspaper about the Jabba the Hutt play set and the dungeon, and it was like, oh, what's this going to be? He floats in this kind of dungeon type thing, and again, not really what ended up happening in the movie, but my entire childhood was filled with Star Wars. It was always there, whether Marvel, DC, other interests were there. Star Wars was always there. It was always consistent, really like those superhero things. I remember even seeing, lining up the first movie I remember seeing in the theaters is Return of the Jedi. I remember, lining up early and ultimately getting into the theater and sitting next to literally what now we would call a cosplayer, but it was a guy, some guy who had built his own Boba Fett outfit, costume, and that was just amazing. And when Fett ends up in the Sarlacc pit there, I remember just cheering. I was like, yeah, because he was Han's enemy, and Han was my guy, and it's so super excited that somehow I was tying together that this guy sitting next to me was the bad guy, and I was so excited when the good guys won at the end. And Star Wars never really went on the shelf for me. It was always there. I mean, I definitely didn't lean into it as much in high school as many don't, when I was playing basketball and doing all sorts of other things and stuff, but I still had my carded Snaggletooth and Reese and Squid Head in my room. I never, got rid of them, never opened them up. I always kind of stuck with toys. I got back really collecting toys pretty hardcore in 95. So I'd say maybe I took a 5-year break from really collecting, even though I was still doing some stuff with comics then, but toys. When the Power of the Force 2 series came out, and there was a Luke Skywalker at the Riverside Tyler Target that Carmel had found, and she encouraged me to get it, and it's okay, let's dip my toe into this, and all of a sudden I was all into all sorts of collecting toys, and it hasn't let up at all since 95. Again, I've collected really consistently throughout that whole time. 99 obviously brought the Phantom Menace. Remember, the battle to get tickets weeks before was in a time when you didn't have reserved seating. Then remember lining up, literally we had people lining up at 10 or 11 in the morning the day of the movies to get a good seat, and we were on the back side of the Edwards Corona Cinema waiting to get in, and we saw Phantom Menace, and I think most in my group were pretty mixed on it, but we were just excited to be there celebrating Star Wars. And we just sought it out wherever. Went to the Cantina at the FAO Sports in Vegas, went to Star Wars in concert, collecting all those things. And then as we got to the Parks and Cons era, it just became easier and easier to kind of integrate that in, and it became, especially when Disney bought it, obviously became a mainstream, not that it wasn't mainstream before, but it just became something everybody was interested in. We were able to really tie it into a lot of our coverage. In 2014, Nerdist, our friend Amy Ratcliffe over there did a little piece on me in the Fully Operational Fandom about my Star Wars collection. It's I'm huge into Star Wars. So saying all of that, including the fact I listen to about 8 different Star Wars podcasts currently, to say that I am very curious because, going into this land, I want to know, is it going to be like what Potter was for friends of mine that were hardcore into, Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios? Is it going to be what it was for them, where they were in tears and it was just so emotional? Our friend George over at CBC Gear, he had brought up, we saw him this weekend at Comic-Con Revolution, he had brought up, it's the big difference there is with Wizarding World, people were going into scenes from the book and the movies, whereas here, this isn't Mos Eisley, it's not Hoth, it's not Bespin, it's a place inspired by those places. So, and I think that is a huge thing. I've read the Galaxy's Edge comic #1, and so, I've read as much as there is to tie into the slam, but just very curious what my feelings will be about it. Now, I don't doubt, no matter what, it's going to be a fantastic land, but I'm curious, will it really feel like Star Wars to me? Because I don't have any interest in Cars, the Cars franchise, but I absolutely think Cars Land is one of the best things around. And so I think no matter what, I'll enjoy it on that level. But will I enjoy it as a hardcore, lifelong Star Wars fan? Will I feel like I'm walking into some scene from a potential movie or a place that could be? I don't know. We'll see, but I don't have any doubt it's going to be awesome regardless. So I will report back on that. I'll also share some strategies and tips, as I said. And so with that, I am going to go get myself checked in and head into Galaxy's Edge. Alrighty, I am back, and a lot has happened since I wrapped up recording. It's like I just kind of want to jump on real quick to capture my immediate thoughts as I have basically just returned to the car from spending 4 hours in Star Wars Galaxy Edge. I mean, it's a lot to process. There's a lot there. There's a lot that I love. There's some things that seemed not quite to live up, but I also think some of those things are maybe more specific to this being a preview and them not being up and running, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But just to kind of process the thoughts immediately, and then we'll get into like strategy. And I want to stay in this podcast, relatively spoiler free. I mean, it's kind of weird to say that because I feel like Disney itself has spoiled most everything in Star Wars Galaxy Edge. I mean, there's articles on like the Dianoga popping out at the water fountain and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know that there's anything really much that I could say that they haven't already said. But, I tried to stay away from as much of that as possible. I didn't read very many articles at all. I did not want to know the exact layout of the land. I kind of wanted to go in and experience it myself. It's funny because we had to bag up our phones, similar to if you've ever been to D23 Expo where they make you self-bag and seal up your phone. So, absolutely no pulling your phone out to take pictures while you were in the land. But as I was in there, I brought paper and napkins and a pen, and I just kind of like sketched maps of the land so that just I would have it for reference later. And that was kind of a fun way. One, I think it'll be just a cool thing to, I'll throw in some scrapbook type thing just for myself to remember it with my, other little items from today, like my wristband and stuff. But also it helped me just to kind of process more of what was actually in there, because I really wanted to use the time to, one, enjoy, but also two, to strategize and come up with plans for when we return multiple times in the next month here. So the process of getting people in real quick was very smooth, like incredibly smooth. In fact, I would say everything ran. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around how smoothly they ran everything tonight. Like, I mean, everything was clockwork. We made our way to Launch Bay. That's where we got our wristband. They had tons of people in there instantly. We showed them our ticket. Within seconds, we had our wristbands on. Then we shuffled ourselves off over to the Fantasyland gate of Galaxy's Edge, or the one nearest Fantasyland. We got there around 3:20. They weren't letting people in. They said till closer to 4, but it was very much one of those things I'm used to at Comic-Con, where it's like, well, we're not allowing you to queue up, but at some point we're going to just let everybody in. So it was basically, it was literally like a Comic-Con thing where you're just like walking back and forth. They don't want you just stopping right in front, but there's all these people kind of milling about. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, come on in. And everybody came in. They gave everybody a plastic baggie. The goal was one per family to, I shouldn't say plastic baggie, but like a, to seal up your phone type of thing. And sealed my phone up in it, put it in my pocket. pocket. We queued up right there, and we were like in the first probably 10 to 15 people for our slot to make it into land, which what was really nice about that is we had to wait probably 20 to 30 minutes just kind of standing there waiting to get into the land, but we could see everything going on in that immediate area. So, if you don't want any spoilers at all, then you may not want to listen in terms of like the layout, but I just will share kind of what we could see from that view. And basically off to the left was the milk bar where you can get your blue milk or your green milk. Kind of dead center was a long line from the people previous, the group previous, which we didn't know what that line was. And then we realized that was the Cantina. More on that later. Off to the right was kind of a first order store. And then we could tell there was like some sort of photo op to the immediate right that we couldn't really see from where we were at, which we later learned was a staging area with Kylo Ren's ship. And they would do little I don't know if it's called performances, but every so often Kylo Ren and troops would kind of mill about over in that area and a first order officer. But it was really cool just being able to stand there. I mean, on the walk to kind of queue up there's some moisture evaporators outside. The music hits. You hear kind of the critters of the land, chirping away in the background. And it was really cool. I mean, it was really cool. It didn't hit me with a wave of emotion. It did hit me with a wave of being impressed, though, of looking and seeing the ceiling. I mean, just every crack and crevice looking aged and lived in. I mean, I kept going back to the original thing about the Star Wars universe of movies. What I know some of us kind of, myself definitely included, disconnected with somewhat in the prequels where it didn't look as lived in. But what was so special, one of the things so special about, Star Wars, or some call it A New Hope now, was that it was a lived in universe. Things looked kind of dirty and grimy at times and dusty and old and lived in. And this looked lived in, and all of the land looked lived in. And that was probably the thing that impressed me most is you saw like whatever, an air conditioning grate, and you could see behind it that, I mean, this is a brand new land, obviously, but purposely it's like it looks aged. It looks like this land's been here 100 years or whatever, and people have been living here the entire time. So I think what I'll say for this little segment, and then I'll take a little break and come back and talk more. In terms of the emotion, where I really got punched with emotion in a way that I had hoped for, but didn't know if I would get, was queuing up for Millennium Falcon for the Smuggler's Run. Getting in, seeing the Falcon, I don't know, it didn't do a ton at first from the front side. I think because it's just, again, it's been so hyped online that it's like, yep, this is the same one. We saw a picture of Iger with Steven Spielberg and J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy and, Steve Trowbridge, and it was just like, yep, that's it. But when we got in the queue and we were behind the Falcon, that was stuff that we've not seen, or at least I had not seen yet. That's when it hit me. And going through that queue, it kept hitting me. And then as we got into the kind of last kind of waiting area before actually getting into the cockpit of the Falcon, it hit me again. And so I definitely didn't, cry, although I would have been totally fine with that. Because, I think anytime you can feel emotion in this world in any sort of positive emotional way, that's a good thing. But I definitely got a little teary-eyed, a little bit, on the backside of the Falcon, making our way in the queue. It did hit me there, and it all of a sudden was like, wow, this is really special. Not only is the land special, but, obviously the ability to be here in the very first group previewing it. I mean, people have been testing various parts of the land, cast members for weeks now, but to be in that very first day, to be in the land with it functioning, with actors out interacting, with animatronics moving, sure, it's not as polished as it's going to be when it opens to the full public, but that kind of almost makes it even more special. And so that was all very surreal. Definitely a lifetime, memorable moment, no doubt for sure. And so all of that, and there's more in terms of the testing side. I would think I'll share some more things there, but as it stands right now, had all the time we were on our feet in Star Wars Galaxy Edge, and then walked down to downtown to say goodbye to my cast member friends there, and then making way, and then of course for me at least, I head out to Disneyland about 100 days a year. and almost all of them we park at Mickey and Friends, but I swear the 5 to 10 a year that we park at Toy Story, it's always miserable. And today, parking was terrible. As I got here, they were shuffling people into the Anaheim Convention Center. I got one of the last spots, I think, in Toy Story at the time. And so the buses to get back to Toy Story as I left literally wrapped, and we're almost going out to Harbor. So I made the walk, and I'm pretty dead tired. And I didn't eat. We'll talk about that. I mean, I had a bunch of drinks and things like that, but I didn't eat, and we'll talk about that in terms of the strategies and things like that. So I think right now I'm going to get the car moving, get out of this Toy Story lot that looks like there's a line a mile long to get out of the parking lot. I'm going to get out of the parking lot, get on the road, get something to eat, get my brain a little refreshed, and come back to y'all to talk a little bit more about the experience and some strategies if you have a 4-hour block coming up in the near future. Alrighty, and I'm back and on the drive home now, and have had a little bit of time to process thoughts and think I know where I'm going with things now. So I think probably the best thing to do is just kind of lay out the path that we took, and then I can kind of point out what were things that I think we did incorrectly and would change next time. You know, this was kind of just our trial run, basically going down on this preview. But also, you know, I'll kind of touch a little bit on some things that are just highlights or, you know, things that I think are really cool about it. Again, without going in super deep. We will be there on the 31st. We are there at opening that day. And so I think we will do, you know, a full podcast, go in more depth. Carmel will be there. I don't know that we will talk quite as much about strategy unless, I mean, I guess strategies can change. I mean, this is definitely a work in progress, so we can share more there. But for the sake of this recording, I think probably what's best is, you know, focusing a little bit more on the strategy side, a little bit less on the deep spoiler side of things. So basically, as I said, we were let in. We saw the line for the Cantina. In my head, that was already the plan, was to go for the Cantina first, knowing that it has the most limited capacity, really, of any of the stuff that I'd be interested in there. That said, because it was already a long line, and as we were waiting there for a half hour, just kind of looking in on the land, the thing that I had noticed is that while the Cantina line was getting a little longer, it wasn't really moving much at all. Like, I saw the same people, because I was kind of curious, like, were we going to be allowed to buy things and, you know, get souvenirs and stuff. And I was noticing, okay, well, that person has a Build-A-Droid, or that person has one of the creatures. And sure enough, they just weren't moving all that fast. So by the time that we were in the land, it seemed like, I don't know, it was too hard to commit to, like, well, let's spend now the first 2 hours waiting in line to get into the Cantina. And so we decided, well, let's see, you know, let's loop back. Obviously, there's been the famous statement made that there's plenty of time to do everything in the 4 hours, and thought, yeah, I still don't think there really probably is going to be the Cantina, but let's wait and see. And so kind of just pushed past it. And then dead center, you know, there's the Millennium Falcon. As I said, it wasn't a big emotional stir seeing it from the outside. That came later, more when we got on the inside. But it was walk on. There was basically, you know, no wait. I think it said it had a posted time of 15 minutes, but you just saw people kind of flying through the queue there. And so we opted to go ahead and do that, even though my plan was really to focus on doing the Falcon last. It just, I guess, partly the emotion of the moment, partly because it was a thing we could do right away and walk on. Now, in terms of strategizing, I would definitely say if you have interest in the Cantina, it is critical to do it first, even if you're going to wait a couple hours there. And at least that's from what I observed. We just saw it get worse and worse. Now, we had a 4 to 8 p.m. slot, which was perfect. It was the first choice, what we wanted. We were able to that way be there for, you know, we're there obviously on the first day, but also we were able to see the first night. We were there. I mean, we purposely just kind of were taking that last hour from 7 to 8 and just kind of watching the lights go on and just kind of see the transition to night. And that was a lot of fun and really cool. And I will say, I do think that the night is even more impressive than the daytime. I mean, it just, the way that place comes alive at night, the lighting scene, the droids' eyes light up, and, you know, the various switches and buttons that were lit all day, but now at night, just the way they're so vibrant and strong. So beautiful in the day, but definitely even better at night, I would say. But so yeah, the Cantina would be that first priority. We didn't do that. We went to the Falcon, had a great time with it. Now, I think a very fortunate thing, I don't think anybody else in my group felt this way once we were assigned our 6 spots onto the Falcon. I got the engineering role, which that role is being kind of keeping things afloat and trying to grab the cargo that we're chasing down. Others got the gunners, others got the pilots. Now, a suggestion there, if you really want to be in control, you want to be in the left side pilot seat. The left side pilot seat is really the flying of the Falcon. The right side pilot seat is more the acceleration, the jump to light speed, you know, but if you want to be Han, you know, you want to be in the left side seat there. The gunner seats behind it, I don't know that there was too much of a difference on either side, or the engineer side. The ride, you know, it's fine. What you're seeing and the movements are fine. It's nothing groundbreaking by any means. It's just fine. I think the real big thing is the fact that you're in the, you know, you're going through this queue, which has a ton of cool Easter eggs all over the place. Iconic scenes for photo ops. The Hondo animatronic, you get a scene with him that's really pretty fantastic. He moves really fluid and great. But you know, the interactive portions of it, the fact that you're pressing buttons, it's kind of awkward because you're like, you know, you're facing forward, but you're having to look to the right. If you're not in the pilot seats, if you're a gunner or an engineer, you have to look to the right to interact. And so the buttons are doing, you know, so like for my position as an engineer, I needed to help keep the ship healthy or repair things. And so there'd be buttons going off. So I needed to kind of look to the right to make sure I was doing that so that we, you know, earned credits and all of that. But by looking to the right, I was missing what was going on in front of me. So, you know, it would be kind of a cool thing to go with 6 people that don't mind just crashing into everything and just not worry about repairs and just really watch the story unfold in front of you, because I felt it was really distracting having to go back and forth from pressing buttons and trying to see where we're going. But a really nice thing that happened to us that, and, you know, I started to allude to that, but I don't think the others thought was nice, is the ride broke down. And so I would say 45 seconds into our flight, everything went black. The screen went black. Now, what was cool is, one, we got more time just in the cockpit to flip switches. And I definitely encourage you, if you go into the Millennium Falcon, look up and see all of the extra, you know, switches to flip up there. Although they don't have any part in the interactive elements of the ride, they're fun and super iconic switches if you're familiar with Star Wars and the Millennium Falcon. But 2, what was pretty awesome, I thought, is Hondo talks to you the entire time that you're broken down. So he says, you know, this is what we call in the business a major malfunction. And he's just kind of admittedly kind of making fun of the fact that he's tap dancing as they're working on repairs and that there's problems. And I thought it was really fun, the fact that you had him. I mean, I don't know how much the speech differs, but he even at certain points said, wow, it's been about a minute and a half or something like that we've been doing this. And he just kept talking. And I thought that was really fun and pretty cool. And so I was fine being broken down and getting this extra Hondo dialogue and this extra time in the cockpit. Now, again, photos not allowed, so it would have been nice to take some photos while we were in there, but we'll save that for when we go back opening day. So eventually we were actually removed from our cockpit, and that was cool as well. We kind of waited in the hallway. We saw that our hallway was kind of blasted because things didn't go well, because basically everything broke. And then they basically walked us underground, which was cool as well. We saw different corridors that are not part of the normal boarding process, and then back upstairs to the other side to a different pod. And then we took the Falcon and we had our fun, and our driver crashed it into a bunch of things, and we made like 7,000 credits, and Hondo gave us a hard time about our poor driving. And so that was that, and that was cool. So then it spit us out, and we made our way. The antiquities shop was then kind of the next or one of the big things on the list to me. I really wanted to check out the animatronic in there, the Ithorian, basically like Hammerhead from Star Wars. He looked super cool. The Sarlacc, the baby Sarlacc that's featured in the Star Wars Galaxy Edge Marvel comic #1 is in there. There's a bunch of different little kind of creatures you can check out, but some really awesome props on display. Really awesome merch, and this is the first of the merch we saw. And so what I'll say about the merchandise is, wow, there's a lot of it, and pretty much every spot is selling different stuff. Like, there's a lot of different shops and some different kiosks, and they're almost all selling different things. So that was, I mean, I've never seen merchandising at this level. I mean, it was a ton of stuff. And there were some really cool things, and I'm not going to go down the list of everything, although tons of it was shown at Celebration. Some things stood out more than others. The little characters from the chess scene in the Millennium Falcon, they were selling, there was 2 different sets with those, $130 each. And it's like, wow, that was the first thing that caught me, and it might have been my favorite thing I saw there, but I could not go down that road. It was just too pricey, and so left those there. But it's just a really neat shop. You can also build your saber in there. Not the same as the kind of scavenger saber experience. I'll get to that in a minute. This is, you're looking in the glass case and you're holding the saber stuff, and you can build them there. They started, I believe, at $109 for just the hilt, and then it was another $45 for the blade, and pretty pricey. Most everything in the land pretty pricey, but some pretty fantastic stuff. I moved on to there, went through the marketplace area, saw the food stops. Now, here's what I'll say, going back to the strategy. I do think if you want to, maximize experiences, particularly if you are later in the day, like we were a 4 to 8 spot, I would do the Cantina first, even if it's going to take longer, if you really want to see it, and then do food next. The Ronto's roasters looked really cool. They had a 8D8 torture droid from Jabba's, or that type of droid, roasting, the creatures, the Rontos and whatnot, with an engine there. It looked really fantastic. But there really was pretty much 2 spots to eat in that area, or in that whole land, and both of them were quite busy. And it's funny because when we first got out and we saw them, and it was like they had a little bit of a line, it's like, it'll go down, or, we weren't really quite hungry yet. And we both had eaten not that long before arriving there, and so we just let it go, and we never ended up eating because those lines just got worse and worse. They let the nighttime group in, so we had 4 to 8. They let another group in at 7. So once about 6:45 hit, that place became packed because it's like you had 2 groups at the same time. So we missed our opportunity to eat then, and that was fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. Did some, looking around in the various, the bazaar area there. There's some really cool, different toys. There's a pin shop. But, stopping at the pin shop, one of the things that did surprise me in kind of not a great way, is just from what I had heard about this whole idea of immersion. I mean, they've really been talking immersion for a long time, and the idea that you are going to live in this land, and they're really going to kind of put some of the packaging to the side and try and make it feel like you are in Batuu, that you are in the world of Star Wars. It was kind of, I don't know. It didn't feel like Star Wars to go into a pin trading shop. I mean, the shop was, it was of a decor that fit with Batuu, but the fact that there was just pins everywhere and lanyards, and they had Disney price tags on them. And I noticed too is everybody, and I don't know if this was just something going on with previews, but everybody's using Disneyland bags rather than, any sort of Batuu type bag. I mean, everybody was carrying around a Disneyland bag, just like you bought something at the Emporium on Main Street. All the price tags on everything were the types of price tags you would see on things on Main Street. So that kind of kills a little bit of that immersion. Now, in the grand scheme of things, everybody knows they're in a theme park and you got wait times and all that, but it's just, they had trumpeted that so hardcore about the merchandise size and their side, and they're making, the wooden dolls and, things like that. And then even buying, and I did pick up the Kylo Ren Black Series set, the exclusive set with the mouse droid and whatnot, and that was super awesome and cool to be able to get it, and it's a Galaxy Edge exclusive, but I really thought they'd be selling that kind of like right outside Galaxy's Edge or Star Trader or something, because buying Hasbro Black Series figures just kind of takes you out of an immersive experience. It's fine. I like them. I bought them, obviously. But it was a little surprising, again, just when that had been made such a big deal of. And again, some of these things might be adjusted in the weeks to come. This is a preview, so who knows? But there was that. Then making your way. So really, I mean, the land itself, this has been, well documented, but it kind of hits you in the face when you're there, and it's pretty cool. Is, really at the, Fantasyland end of Batuu, you have the First Order taking over, and then on the Critter Country end, you have the Resistance, and obviously that's where the Rise of Resistance ride is, which is not currently open, although, wow, you couldn't see a whole lot of it, but you could tell it was massive, and you could see some of the queue, and it was really reminiscent of Pandora to me in terms of just this cavernous, situation where you're going into the mountainside. We could hear some sort of beast. It almost sounded like a wampa or something, like yelling from the queue, so I don't know if there's cool things to see there or not, but maybe it's just the sounds. The sound design in general was really fantastic. You could hear some bleed of the Mark Twain from time to time, but that was about it. That was the only time that kind of took you out of being in there from the sound side of things. Otherwise, you heard, I think there was like some Wookiees, in the background. You heard other sorts of critters, all those things. Pretty impressive across the board there. So then over in that area, they do have a couple photo ops, which are cool. You've got some Resistance people wandering around. We interacted with a Resistance pilot, and really our question for her was, are more of your crew going to be around? Because during our time there, we saw just one Resistance pilot and one Wookiee, which, I guess it was Chewbacca. And she gave us kind of a hard time, and how does she know that we're, not part of the First Order and whatnot? And ultimately she said, they just established camp there, and more would be coming very soon. And so, okay, cool. And the wandering around, their interactions, it's very Ghost Town Alive, if you're familiar with Knott's Berry Farm at all, meaning that, they are wandering and kind of organically having conversations with people, and how much you want to lean into the conversation will depend on how much you get out of it. If you're shy and don't really want to talk to them, that's not going to go very far. If you really want to get into the role, they'll go with you. What I did like quite a bit is, they had these photo ops, but these characters that are wandering around kind of had seemingly jobs. So the pilot seemingly was kind of like recruiting in a way and trying to get, see where people's allegiance lie. And then Chewbacca was working on various, I don't know if one was a moisture evaporator or something else, but working on various, was working on the ships as well in the area, and different sound effects would go off. But it's like he had a job. And so, yeah, sure, he could stop real quick and take a picture, but he was constantly moving around and doing stuff, and that was pretty cool. There were some kiosks down there selling stuff. We didn't see any of the Diet Coke Sprite products. I don't think they had them ready yet, the exclusive containers. They did have the Dasani water. Bought one of those. We'll keep the bottle as a souvenir, and also tried the blue milk, and I absolutely loved the blue milk, and I am shocked. I don't know that anybody listening to this could be anywhere near as shocked as I am, because I am pretty limited in what I like when it comes to foods, and even more so when it comes to drinks. Oftentimes I pretty much drink water and Diet Coke, and that's about it. A little bit of milk here and there, and but I really, really liked it. It's, blue rice or a rice milk. And the closest thing I can describe it as is kind of a push-up pop type of a sherbet flavor. Kind of I don't know if it was really hard for me to pinpoint the actual flavor, though, beyond that. It was the smoothness, but it was great, and I ended up buying 2 of them. They run $8 a pop, so it's again the butterbeer, though. But it's like, how am I going to be at Star Wars Land? How am I going to be there and not try the blue milk, right? And I'm sure that's going to be the case for a lot of people. So it was a good kind of slushy type drink. That was the only food or drink we bought in the land. Actually, I take that back. The individual I was with bought the popcorn as well, which is kind of a spicy and sweet popcorn, which I'm not a huge fan of flavored popcorn, so I didn't really have I tried one kernel of sweet and one of hot, and it's like, yep, that's what it is. But that may be a real home run for some people, but but I didn't do a lot with it. But, the land itself, it's just so much about the interactive elements. I mean, we didn't even get into, because we didn't have the phone to use, we didn't get into any of the Play Disney app stuff. They did have phone type devices you could check out. Obviously they were shut off from being able to, get on the internet, or I should say being able to share anything. But people were checking those out and, doing some of those sorts of activities. I figured we'll save that for another day. And I'll save that for doing it on my phone when I can actually take pictures of things and stuff like that. The Droid Factory looked great. What a smart way to be able to get people to, spend money. The conveyor belt with all the droid pieces flying by. Super fun, super cute, super cool. The other saber experience about, putting your saber together yourself, and I was really curious how that was going to work, and we knew that was one of the first things you needed to do if you wanted to do it. Long story short, in talking to the cast members there, it is $200. You basically pay to get in. So you're paying $200 for your saber in advance, and then you're going inside and building it. So like you get this card that proves to the people inside the temple or whatever that you're, here for the right reasons or something like that. And I said, so for like a family of 4, like, does each person have to buy the saber? And they said that you could bring one adult or one person with you. So it basically, the way I took it, or I shouldn't say the way I took it, I asked for clarification, and the guy was a little cagey, and I was like, I don't understand, like, this doesn't seem like it's a cagey, like, I'm not trying to ask any, hard-hitting question here. I'm just asking, how much would it cost for me to go inside here? But he was a little cagey about it. But at the end of the day, so I was like, yeah, so like a family of 4, it would be $400. Basically, each kid would need to buy a saber, $200 each, and they could each bring a parent or something like that. And he's like, yeah, that's about right. And I was like, okay, I think it sounds totally right. But so yeah, I don't know that I'm ever doing that experience. That's really weird. Like, I don't know. I have a nice FX lightsaber that was given to me as a gift long ago. It's a Darth Maul one, and I don't know. I like lightsabers, but I don't know that I need to own a $200 one. So I don't know. That's weird. Maybe it's worth it just for the experience itself. I don't know. We just didn't do it. So I'll have to weigh that for future consideration. And maybe we'll do that when we go back. But I would say that that's an earlier experience as well, because when we got there was like no one there, and by the time we were leaving, it was pretty deep. I'd say there was about 30 or 40 people waiting to go inside, so that's a whole lot of $200 sabers they were going to be selling tonight. So I mean, everything really looked fantastic. I don't think things could have been more polished in terms of the operation side of things. I can't even think of what could have been more polished. I mean, it was so smooth. Getting in, getting out of the land, wristbands, everything. I just hope that was all a preview of what we'll see when things open, and I think it will be, but definitely try to hit those, if you want to do the saber experience and the Cantina, hit those first. If you want pictures with the Falcon, or really any of the pictures, I'd say try to hit those midway. Like, we got our pictures in front of the Falcon with no wait at all, and we went kind of right in the middle of our 4-hour block, but it was crazy busy at the beginning and crazy busy at the end. It seemed like it was like a high priority for people, either like to do before they left the land or when they got into the land. But besides that, a lot of the stuff, I mean, it was about kind of milling about. The land is really set up to be a place that you mill about, and you shop, and you eat, and you drink, and rinse and repeat. And so with having the 4 hours in there, it was plenty of time for us, in that we weren't going to be doing the saber experience because of the financial side of it, and we weren't doing the Cantina because it just was going to be too much of a demand of time, and honestly, on my feet, I couldn't stand that long waiting in that line. So that's kind of where those two things fell. But besides that, there was tons of time. We went in every shop multiple times. We saw every animatronic do its thing multiple times. They were limiting access, and my understanding that's going to be the plan going forward, to one ride on the Falcon per 4-hour block, and they regulate that by using a black marker on your wristband when you go through. So, it is what it is. We did ours early. Had to do it over again, we would have gotten in line for the Cantina, because it probably would have been about an hour wait at the start. But I don't know, your first time in this land, do you really want to spend it waiting an hour, even if the Cantina is amazing? I guess that's where I was at. And so even though I'm giving advice to, do it differently, I can't say that I would do it differently if I had that knowledge and was still doing it my first time. It's just, when you go in, you've got this kind of Christmas morning excitement, and you don't really want to just, walk straight to a line and just stand there while everybody's, running around and seeing animatronics and driving a Falcon and having character moments and all of those types of things. So a lot of cool interactive stuff, a lot of cool merchandise, really strong presentation across the board on the operations side. I got to say, it was a very, very impressive performance that they put together there. I can't say enough good things about how well they put that all together, and what a good job they did with just the design of the land, the sound design, and all those little, the little cracks and the crevices with the dirt that's put there on purpose, not because it's old, but that lived in universe. I mean, that is where it does hit you, because it does feel, it feels a little Mos Eisley, and that's what, to me it was most like, and what I would most liken it to. And that was a good feeling, to be in a lived-in universe, and it felt like, you were there. I should say all of the cast members, whether they were, photo pass or, they were selling the blue milk, they, for the most part, were in their roles. There were a few cast members doing photo pass and security that were in their regular Disneyland attire, and I think they were cast member uniforms from other, parts of the park, and I kind of think they were just brought over there probably because they needed more people, and I really don't think that's something that will be seen as the land opens fully. But the cast members that clearly were in their Batuu outfits really lended credibility to the land, because they laid into the roles. The girl who sold me my first blue milk, as they were preparing it, she was asking me where I was from, and Earth, and I've never heard of that place, and she said she's been saving up her credits till she can get out of this land, or out of this planet, and she just wants to get somewhere else. She doesn't know if she'll get far, but she'll shoot for the moon and do the best she can to get away from Batuu to live a new life. And it was like, okay, cool. It felt like these cast members, many of them had developed their backstories and were, they had something to say, and that was really cool. Now, there was others who didn't seem like they had a whole lot to say, and they were just like really concerned about some line management things and stuff. But that's okay. That's okay. It's a lot going on there, and it was the first day, and I think every cast member we came across, all things considered, did a fantastic job, and I think the land is pretty brilliant. So yeah, that's, I think, about all I have to say about that. Without going into deep spoilers of all the different Easter eggs and props and things that pop out of this and that and the other thing. Although, like I said, I feel like Disney's kind of put most of it all out there already anyway. So if you want it, it's easy to get. There was very few things. There were things, but most of them I felt like I had kind of started to see a spoiler somewhere and had dodged. So, there's all those things, but hats off to them all the way around. Again, last round of strategies, hit the Cantina first if that's what you want to do. Build the sabers in, bring a lot of money, because everything is pretty pricey there. And then, go from there. I'd say plan to do the Falcon in the last 20 to 30% of your 4-hour block there. And, really, it's one of those things where I guess the best advice I could have about it outside of, that is hitting the Cantina and the saber thing early and eating early, so that those before everybody because everybody's doing those after they do the rides and stuff. But after that, I would just circle. And if you come by and it's busy, it's too busy to take a photo in front of the Millennium Falcon, circle back in a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and see. The Falcon never got above a 45-minute wait during our time there. It basically fluctuated from a walk on to 45 minutes in terms of at least us walking by and seeing what the sign said. So it was always very doable. And so other things a little bit less so, or much less so when it comes to the Cantina. The Cantina feels like kind of the one big miss, just in that, not that it's not incredible inside, but whether it's incredible or not inside, the fact that they have made it with such low capacity, it really needs to be probably 10 times the size it is. And so that's unfortunate that more people aren't going to be able to pass in. And I don't know what they're going to do about that, because I don't think they really want that big line, and having switchbacks in the middle of the two streets doesn't really look great. And so I don't know, but I really don't know where else they can line people up. So we'll see as things go on. So if you're heading out to Galaxy's Edge, have a blast, enjoy it, whether it's for cast member previews, media stuff, opening, the weeks to come, or booking a spot afterwards. Enjoy. There is a lot to enjoy about it, and lean into it and try to really embrace all of it, and you'll have that much more fun with it. So with that, because this is kind of a special podcast, I just feel like, the topic itself, it's such a big thing, and I think I'm just going to leave it there with that. So we'll leave the normal calendar plugs off this time, and leaving reviews and all of those things. We'll just kind of leave it there and let it go. So until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.
Thank you for listening to the Parks and Cons podcast. Join us again next time for more news, notes, and discussions on the intersection of awesome, where conventions, themed entertainment, collecting, and general geek goodness collide. For past episodes, links to our YouTube channel, photo galleries, and more, please visit parksandcons.com. We appreciate your feedback, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at comments@parksandcons.com. If you enjoy our work, help us add to the community by recommending us to your friends, or simply leave the show a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever podcast reviews are accepted. As always, thank you for listening to the Parks and Cons podcast, and look for us in line somewhere. The Parks and Cons podcast is not affiliated with the conventions, theme parks, or other entities mentioned during this podcast. All trademarks are the properties of their respective trademark owners. Parks and Cons is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. For more information about this show, visit us at parksandcons.com or email us at comments@parksandcons.com.